to have this opportunity to speak once again candidly on the issue of corruption and the way it attempts to pervade every layer of our society, from the political to the personal. Corruption takes and continues to take an enormous toll on the ability of government to function effectively, on the hopes and dreams of individual citizens, and ultimately affects the morale of an entire nation. It is an issue that we all agree must be addressed aggressively, but in order to do that, we must also recognize that corruption is an issue that must be defined and discussed responsibly. Corruption recently has been high on the national agenda, and indeed has been for many years. But long before that, it was a central theme of gossip and rumors, public finger-pointing, and especially partisan acrimony. It has in our present day become something of a political club that opposing parties and governments used to beat each other over the heads with. Since the period of the First Republic, there has not been a single president or presiding government that has not been accused of corruption. This makes sense given the history of post-independence Africa and the pattern of behavior that was set from country to country by the governing elite. That pattern being win or seize power, and to the victors go the spoils. And the losers were the average hard-working citizens, families, and communities and countries that for decades were crippled by the greed of other people's individual self-interest. Given this history, it makes sense that our citizens are often very mistrustful of those in positions of power and access. And they have cause to be, even though times are changing. Africa is changing. Ghana, which has also been no exception to the continent-wide syndrome of seize, loot, and leave, is also changing. Democratic governance, a free independent media, vigilant civil society, bold anti-corruption institutions have all combined to check the impunity with which corruption was perpetrated in the past. Pillars of good governance are being erected, pillars that are firmly anchored by the rule of law and a constitutional democracy. Strong anti-money laundering legislation, an active financial intelligence center to track transfer of dirty money make it more difficult than before to hide the proceeds of corruption. Nonetheless, corruption still persists. It still persists right alongside those institutions, as though it were an institution in itself. The accusations of corruption against an individual are easy to make. However, if we truly wish to rid our society of this cancer, then we must start talking about it rationally, realistically, and responsibly. Over the years, we have seen different governments take measures to fight the corruption that exists within. Sometimes those measures have been drastic. People have been shot dead, jailed, or censored. Sometimes those drastic measures have been effective, but they have by and large not been viable long-term solutions to the canker. In other words, corruption, when defined not as the action of a single individual but as an institution, cannot be fixed with ad hoc knee-jerk reactions. It takes an approach that is also systemic, an approach that focuses on education as much as punishment, an approach that encourages societal abhorrence for corruption on any level, and it takes sustained vigilance. It also takes transparency, accountability, and leadership, all of which, as president, I'm committed to giving our nation and our people. I do this not because it is required of me as president. I do this because I'm first and foremost a Ghanaian. And like any other Ghanaian, from Boko to Brekum, from Kumasi to Axem, it is my civic duty to fight corruption. Ghanaians are no longer satisfied with palliatives and long-winded statements, or with one-off solutions that do not address the problem as something that is systemic. We want and we need firm action now. We need action to curb the corruption that currently exists, and we need action to prevent corruption from flourishing and impeding our national progress. Over the years, I've made several appeals to the institutions responsible for fighting corruption to promptly investigate allegations of corruption and take swift action to honor the public's trust in them. We know our institutions are weak and are facing major challenges. They lack adequate manpower, expertise, and resources. However, for institutions to remain relevant, they must show that they are doing the maximum they can with the little resources, even with the little resources they have. As a Ghanaian, I share the anxiety and frustration that our people are expressing every day. There can be no justification for any official or public employee to take advantage of the weaknesses in the institutions they are to serve in to facilitate the crimes that they are paid to prevent. Neither can there be any justification for blatant institutional negligence. Succeeding in the fight against corruption requires agencies in various autonomous institutions, the executive, legislature, the judiciary, as well as the general public, to play their part and play it well. And we must think outside the box, because the old ways will not meet the expectations of our people. As a people, our ability to fight corruption is weakened and limited when we entrust it to only the political elite, or limit our social responsibility only to talking about it. We need a paradigm shift in our attitudes. I am of the strong opinion that the key to resolving the corruption problem is strengthening our capacity to prevent it, and where it has already occurred, to detect, investigate, retrieve, and successfully prosecute it. Every corrupt act has multiple witnesses who may have nothing to gain from it and are prepared to contribute to fighting the canker. So we must create the enabling environment that empowers such people to contribute their quota to this fight. In essence, there is an urgent need to broaden the framework for fighting corruption. We must break the syndrome of sympathy for perpetrators who get caught and muster the courage to report acts of wrongdoing. This government is ready to engage the various independent anti-corruption and governance institutions, including the CHRAJ, IOCO, etc. And that is why, under the umbrella of CHRAJ, we have developed and adopted at cabinet level the new anti-corruption instrument, the 10-year National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, 2012 to 2021. Let me take this opportunity to say a big thank you to all of you for your immense sacrifices towards the completion of this National Action Plan. I'm looking forward to a new partnership with the various institutions and organizations you represent in its implementation. Let me also take this opportunity to appeal to our friends in the media, all religious organizations, traditional leaders, and indeed the entire Ghanaian public, to see this new anti-corruption tool as a window of opportunity for all of us to develop our country through a collective effort to tackle the canker of corruption. Two important instruments in the fight against corruption are still pending in Parliament. One is the Right to Information Bill. I hereby call on Parliament to treat this bill with urgency, and I undertake to the people of Ghana to give my assent as expeditiously as possible as soon as the bill is approved by Parliament. The other is the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan we just talked about, which work I had the privilege of commissioning while I was still the Vice President. The NACAP spells out specific activities for sustained transparency and the fight against corruption. The NACAP has been relayed in the House in April this year and is currently awaiting adoption by Parliament. Here again, I call for urgent action by Parliament in the adoption of this plan. Considering the extended period between the completion of NACAP and its adoption, certainly the budget of 65 million Ghana cedis that was anticipated would certainly need to be revalidated following its adoption by Parliament. Government is prepared to work with the anti-corruption institutions and the donor partners to raise whatever money is needed to implement this plan. Government has also signed up to the Open Government Partnership Initiative. On the National Action Plan and Implementation Roadmap, we are making progress in achieving the many milestones in the 4 thematic areas. On transparency, we are on track and work is ongoing on the Fiscal Responsibility Bill. The Right to Information Bill, as I said before, is in Parliament, and we're urging Parliament to pass it expeditiously. The Public Interest Accountability Committee is being given every support and space to do its work. And we're working with the CRT Implementation Committee to amend CHRAJ's constitutional provisions. We believe issues of strengthening CHRAJ and effectively resourcing it should be taken out of turn and dealt with. In the meantime, I have been speaking with the Minister of Finance to, within the constraints of the budget, increase funding to anti-corruption agencies such as CHRAJ and IOCO. I also intend to propose that a percentage of all proceeds of corruption recovered should be given to the anti-corruption agencies to facilitate their work. On the thematic area of participation, the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development and the Decentralization Oversight Committee that I have the privilege of chairing are working on processes to improve participation of not only CSOs, civil society organizations, but all residents of the district in the work of their assemblies. On accountability, Cabinet has passed the Public Officers Code of Conduct Bill, and it is currently at the AG's office receiving final redrafting before being laid in Parliament. On technology and innovation, work is advanced on the e-immigration project, and we are keeping an eye to complete it on time. Work on gift miss has also taken off and is progressing steadily. We will also be launching soon an online complaints platform in the next few weeks in order that people have more avenues for complaining both about efficiency of public services and issues to do with corruption. I commit again to work hard to achieve the milestones we have set ourselves in the initiative within the agreed 2013-2014 timeframe. However, while awaiting the NACAB, the Right to Information Bill, and other anti-corruption instruments, we cannot treat that as an excuse for any delay in our fight against corruption. There are few administrative actions that we can take to keep us marching forward in this mission, and I'm happy to be able to share a few of them with you today. I've asked the Minister of Youth and Sports to suspend with immediate effect all payments under all JIDA contracts, except payment of arrears to workers, beneficiaries, up to the end of the year. I've asked the Minister of Youth and Sports to complete a review of all modules and accompanying contracts under JIDA by the 15th of December and before 31st December to cancel all contracts that do not pass value for money test. I have placed a moratorium on the creation of any new models under JIDA. I've instructed the Minister for Justice and Attorney General, IOCO, and the Minister of Finance to work with the Minister of Youth and Sports to achieve the following by the end of the year: secure refunds of money wrongfully paid to or appropriated by any individuals or companies from contracts with SADA, JIDA, and the Ghana Revenue Authority, and to do all in their power to retrieve monies paid wrongfully to Waterville and Isophoton. To initiate legal action against individuals or companies to secure these refunds and or to punish them for any wrongdoing established. This morning, I've just received an update from the boss of IOCO on the status of their investigations. I've asked IOCO to make that update known to the public in order for the public to know what action is being taken. I've asked the Minister for Justice and Attorney General to expedite work on the JIDA bill for submission to Parliament. The bill is expected to ensure proper oversight, efficiency in the management of JIDA. And the bill must focus on decentralizing the program to ensure local ownership and real benefits to our communities. I've instructed the Minister for Finance and Minister for Justice and Attorney General to review and advise on a suspension of the contract with Suba Info Solutions, seeing as the contract was not signed by the appropriate authorized government representative. I've directed the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources to present a plan within 2 weeks for ensuring transparency under the Accra Redevelopment Policy. In the spirit of transparency, to publish the names of all beneficiaries of the policy by 16th of December 2013. To review all the transactions involved in the implementation of the policy within 3 calendar months from today, and to scrap the policy that allows public officers to purchase state bungalows allocated to them as official residences. I've instructed the Chief of Staff as of today not to grant any request by any government official to purchase any state vehicle that was assigned to them for official use. Disposal of aged government vehicles must be publicly done and as transparently as possible. A scheme is being discussed which will enable senior public officers to be able to acquire their own vehicles under a hire purchase regimen from vehicle dealerships. I've directed for the re-registration with GV number plates of all government vehicles, including project vehicles, to proceed in earnest and be completed by the first quarter of 2014. As of last week, I've constituted a committee which will determine as one of the factors for the continued stay in office of a Minister of State or any head of any government department or agency an annual report on the extent to which the recommendations of the Auditor General's report have been implemented in the specific MDA. Under my instructions, the Minister for Justice and Attorney General has submitted a fair series of cases from the Auditor General's report to IOCO for investigation and possible prosecution before the Financial Tribunal. All MDAs must present justification for application for any sole sourcing to Cabinet for scrutiny before submission to the PPA. Any contracts above 5 million Ghana cedis that recur in multiple yearly budgets must be made public either through publication in the newspapers or on the new contract management database portal that we will soon be launching. I'm awaiting anxiously the report of the sole Commissioner on Judgment Debts, and I pledge to this nation to deal firmly with the report when it is presented to me. Finally, I've requested the Minister in charge of government business in Parliament to rally his colleagues in Parliament, one, to ensure the quick approval of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, to ensure the early passage of the Right to Information Bill, to ensure the passage of the Whistleblowers Amendment Bill, and to ensure the passage of the Public Officers Code of Conduct Bill when presented to Parliament. If we are to sustain this fight against corruption, I expect the support and involvement of all Ghanaians. We must disrupt the status quo and create a paradigm shift. We must create the kind of environment in our society that empowers people to take a stand. Every corrupt act, as I said, has multiple witnesses. You may have had nothing to do with it, and you may have nothing to gain from it, but you must be prepared to contribute to fighting it. As citizens of this country, each of us has a voice, and each voice carries weight. What we say matters, and what we do matters. Our ability to fight corruption is weakened when we entrust action to only a few, and when we limit our own social responsibility to only talking and gossiping about it, making casual allegations and ignoring our call to action. The more people get involved in this fight against corruption, the stronger our chances of success. My government is determined to bring the maximum transparency and accountability to all public processes that have been a fertile ground for the germination and growth of corruption. Countrymen and women, if we stand side by side in this and work in partnership, government agencies, private sector, businesses, and organizations, as well as individual citizens working within their communities, we will be able to bring an end to the institution of corruption in this country, and perhaps even serve as a model for other countries on the continent to emulate. I look forward to working with you in this endeavor. I thank you for your kind attention.
My issue is about building institutions to fight corruption. And I remember when we met Your Excellency, the civil society organizations, you did raise the issue about single sourcing and I followed up, and I'm aware that you did actually instruct that it should be stopped. But my worry is about the institution, that's the PPA, which has enough authority and power to really work and implement the PPA law. And with your present suggestion of sending all single source to cabinet for approval before the PPA deals with it, I'm just looking at how we can empower these institutions then to play their role, so that the executive is not inundated with so much work. So how would you, have they been giving feedback based on the instructions that you gave? And in moving ahead, how do we ensure that leaders and institutions that have been set up play their role properly, and those that do not play their role are dealt with accordingly? Thank you very much.
Procurement has been one of the major areas in which corruption thrives. And so strengthening procurement processes and procedures is one of the strong instruments that we can use in the fight against corruption. And that is why Parliament passed the procurement laws and the Public Procurement Authority was set up. Single sourcing, we noticed that in many cases of accusation of corruption, you find that the procurement process was single sourced. And the decision as to whether a project should be single sourced or not is taken at the MDA level by one MDA, maybe senior directors in the ministry, including the minister. And then it goes to Public Procurement Authority. While we strengthen the Public Procurement Authority to inject more transparency into the procurement process, I believe that the decision of asking that ministers make justification for single sourcing to cabinet will create another layer. It might create more work for cabinet, but I think that in the fight against corruption, we must take on that extra work so that ministers of state and cabinet, which is the highest decision-making body, can be convinced that it is necessary to single source this particular project before it goes to the procurement authority. There are, of course, some projects that are financed under exempt facilities by countries that need to be single sourced because they want contractors from their countries to do it. Of course, one can understand that. But in other circumstances, the reason to either single source or to do a restricted tendering, needs to be justified. And that is the protective layer, I think, we'll put while we strengthen the PPA and give them a target for meeting in terms of reducing single sourcing and reducing these restrictive tenders. Let's put in this additional layer of supervision so that we're sure that we can eliminate corruption in the process. But let me thank you for your comments. I would expect that these new measures I mentioned will be discussed publicly. They are just a few that we have indicated. We will continue to think up means of strengthening the public processes so that we help to prevent corruption. It is better to put in place systems to prevent corruption than to wait till it has happened and spend public resources to prosecute or sanction people who have perpetrated corruption. And so we'll continue to work with you closely in partnership, and I'm sure that we will make Ghana a model country in terms of the fight against corruption. Thank you.